Hi, good evening. Welcome. Um, we have a fantastic panel. This is a hand-picked panel, right? Um, Most of the IP professionals, why I say hand-picked is um, there is a common denominator among all IP professionals. But above and beyond that common denominator, what is there, or how do you respond in a very out-of-box thinking way is what is special with this panel, right? That's why I said it's a fantastic panel, it's a hand-picked panel. And with that, I would like the panelists to introduce themselves. Um, we'll start with Lakshika.
Thank you. Um, okay, I spell my name as Lakshika, not Lakshita. That's the first thing I would like to clarify here. And I had IP for a company called Altran. This is an engineering R&D company. So we do engineering across domains ranging from automobiles, aero, to life sciences and software. Erstwhile Aricent, I was part of a company called Aricent, which did software engineering R&D services. And we have a niche line of frameworks which we also license. And these are proprietary frameworks, so some parts of it and portions of it also are patented. But this is just to give you a sense of what the company does. What I have done as an IP professional is I have worked across organizations engaged in media and entertainment, in financial services, product companies, and now, of course, it is an engineering R&D company. And thankfully and fortunately for me, I've had to brush against all forms of IP throughout the range of career moves that I made, which ranges all the way from copyright, publishing, and this is copyrights and publishing not only in the printed or newspaper, books, guides form, but also films, music, celebrity management, overlapping with rights which currently are not recognized in India, but there are countries where celebrity rights are also recognized. Ranging all the way from there to trademarks, and of course, because I work with an engineering company a lot with patents and issues that we encounter now, working a lot with engineers and innovators in the company in the domains that I explained. So this is pretty much what I do. I know Murthy mentioned that it's a hand-picked panel. So I don't know, can't comment much on what were the compelling factors for that, hand picking.
That's a trade secret.
Yes, of course. But one thing is for sure, that every day is a new experience and every day is a learning experience. Because with technological advancements and with the way the world is changing around us, it is all so fast and so quick that every morning I get up and I think I know nothing. And every day, I think when I'm wrapping up my day in the evening, which is actually never in the evenings, it's unfortunately mostly very late at night, or I should say early wee hours of the morning. So last night I wrapped it up around 1 o'clock because I was looking through some merger documents and stuff. And every day at the end of it, you feel that you've learned something new. And I think that is something that keeps all of us going, all the IP professionals. So that's my personal take on why it is pertinent, why it is important to be discussing the things that we're discussing here, because I'm here to learn, as all of us are, from what we discussed today. And that'll add to what I've been doing so far. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Prashant Phillips. I'm working in a law firm called Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan. I've been with LNS for the past 15 years now, and my specialization is I'm actually a postgraduate in physics. In terms of the work that I actually handle, I'm involved in patent prosecution and patent preparation, and some aspects of data privacy as well. Now, coming to the fact that what keeps us actually going as patent professionals, definitely technology is one. And when we look at technology, and when I look at myself, the state of the technology 10 or 15 years ago when I in fact started working, uh, I think so where we are right now, it is 10 times or 20 times what it was 15 years ago. And I'm pretty sure that even double the amount of technological innovations would happen in the next 2 to 3 years. So I believe that we were fortunate enough to at least be in a position where we could, at the cusp of the century, or in fact the millennium, we were able to witness a technological boom in its true sense. And we are kind of in the middle of it right now. We have a lot of disruptive technologies blooming around us, seeing the applications. 20 years ago, AI, everything was more nebulous, was mostly there as a concept. Automatic cars, flying cars, all of this was just an idea and theory. But now we actually are seeing the implementations, and this has in fact become possible only over the last 5 to 10 years. And I, at least as a patent professional and more as a technology lover, I'm eager to see what the future in fact holds for all of us, both in terms of a professional handling such innovations, and even as an individual, to see how this technological innovation in fact impacts masses. How does it in fact make mankind a better race in general? So a lot will become evident in the next few years, and I'm pretty much excited about it. And as Ms. Lakshika in fact mentioned, that yes, we do get up every morning knowing nothing, but at the end of the day, we sleep by knowing something at least. And the entire thing then repeats, it's a rinse and repeat everything all over again. So that's it from my end. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Arjun Bala. I'm the managing partner and founder of Metayaj IP Strategy Consulting LLP. I'm a alumnus of IIT Bombay. I graduated in 2003, and in my entire career, I've only worked in IP. So right from the time I graduated, I've been working as an IP professional. I started my career at IIT Bombay's Tech Transfer Office, Dean R&D office, and Dr. Prabhuda Gangri was associated with us. We formulated the IP policy for IIT Bombay at that time. That's how I started my career. I subsequently worked for a US patent law firm, Raj Abhyankar LLP. I was the first person to be hired by Raj, and I started their India operations. And I worked with Silicon Valley startups as well as multinational companies having R&D centers in Bangalore when I was working for Raj Abhyankar's firm. And at the age of 25, I decided that I had all the skills required to start my own practice as a patent agent and as an entrepreneur. I founded Metayaj IP, and I've been running my own firm for the last 15 years. And we work primarily with tech startups, deep technology startups, across ecosystems, including Seattle, Silicon Valley, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and IIT Bombay's incubator. So we work with more than 500 tech startups, incubators, and educational institutions across India. So
Fantastic.
that's what we do.
Also, for the benefit of us, the theme for this discussion is new technologies, data, and IP, the interplay between these areas, right? So when it comes to new technologies, today we would probably focus on high tech rather than pharma, right? So when it comes to high tech, we would be focusing mainly on a couple of things. Of course, we cannot miss AI, right? So artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, drones, IoT, 5G, right? So these are some of the areas we intend to focus, and also encryption technologies, right? I know it's hard, but let's see how it goes. So these are some of the technologies that we would want to focus on. And to start with, my discussion point would be, everybody talks about all these technologies day in, day out. And what I would like to ask each of you is, what is the impact of these technologies on an end user and on companies? Two sentence each.
Okay. So from an end user perspective first, I think...
You can pick a technology, one or two technologies.
Yes, I'll keep it very simple and very basic, and I think this cuts across. The end user is definitely benefiting. I have benefited as an end user from these technologies at the cost of letting go of a little bit of my privacy. I can take a lot of advantages that come with these technologies and how they're deployed in various devices, various day-to-day, how they interplay with whether it is autonomous vehicles or wearables, or any other device or anything else that we are talking of. I mean, we are even talking of smart bins now, forget anything else. So, but again, like I said, if you're ready to do it at a certain cost, this is definitely beneficial. But like they say, there are no free lunches, so we need to understand that. So that's the end user perspective. From a company perspective, I think this has definitely compelled and forced companies to look at innovative business models. You cannot still be running, just to pick up an example, say from media and entertainment space. The whole space has changed. We are now talking of how if you're watching, say if you want to watch a film, there is a lot of stuff that you can do around 3D, augmented reality, and forget 3D, there is now 5D, 7D, So the whole way in which we consume things around us has changed. That has put a lot of pressure on companies to ramp up, and because of that, they need to, and they have, the successful ones have changed their business models. Now is the age of network orchestrators. Now is not the age of hoarding on property or hoarding on tangible assets. So I think that has been a significant business model change. And for that, you need to understand the ramifications in terms of regulatory aspects, legal aspects, to be able to effectively execute those newer business models. It's very easy to say that all of this is creating such a trouble for us. They're coming up with first GDPR, then this, then that. Every day there are amendments. It's difficult to keep pace. It's not a business-friendly environment, but then we need to innovate as businesses if we really need to be in that space. That's about it from my end right now.
So regarding the impact as an individual, definitely what we've just heard in terms of certain commercial benefits that may accrue onto different users. Obviously, there is, I would say, kind of an exchange, a quid pro quo, similar to what a patent actually is. You get a monopoly, but only for 20 years. But many a times, I'll just focus on the advantages on the individuals first. Obviously, life has become extremely different. I wouldn't say it has become, in my opinion, it has become good. Firstly, because I think so. I'm not too sure whether it is good or bad. Yeah.
I was going to contradict you anyways if you said good.
Yeah.
It's not always good. It's at a, but it's
Yeah.
definitely
So
easy.
yes.
It's easy.
No. In the sense, yeah.
iPhone has made our life very easy, especially like WhatsApp.
Yes.
So things have, but
Yeah.
it also have given us a lot of privacy.
I'll just come to the privacy part of it, ma'am. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So when I say good and bad, in the sense, I think so. No, perfectly fine. I think so. This is what an engaging conversation is. So where was I? Yeah. So the good and the bad part of it, I think so. 30 years ago, somebody made a statement saying that lack of knowledge is what makes humans ignorant. But that actually hasn't changed, because we have actually the knowledge of the entire world combined at our fingertips, and yet we will remain, or at least choose to remain, to be ignorant in many senses. But that is more a philosophical point of view. But the good part of it, when I say it's good, that means we have better communication, we have a better lifestyle, we have better medicines, we have better healthcare, we have better transportation. Even though the number of cars have actually increased, the amount of pollution caused due to such increased vehicles is not proportionately higher. So definitely something is in fact going right. obviously there are negatives to both. There is a second side to each story, and that is where I wouldn't blame technology for it. I think so. It is the lack of control which is perhaps not exercised by certain individuals, which may result into the disadvantages that we actually see. Rampant pollution or rampant corruption. We can't blame systems just because corruption exists. We have to blame, in fact, lack of control or lack of enforcement because of which corruption actually exists. So I wouldn't completely say that, okay, technology is good or bad. I think so it is more good because over the past 15, yes, over the past 15 years, we've saved more human lives as compared to what we managed to destroy in the Second World War. So, and that has happened because some people invented the polio vaccine. Some people, there were many, in fact, other vaccines which were in fact invented. I know I'm just going into the pharma space, but so from the high-tech part of it, yes, AI, for example, has now allowed research to be conducted in perhaps much less amount of time as compared to what one would actually require, because now you have mathematical models at our disposal, and those mathematical models now enable one to get insights into very intricate and complex systems. When I say systems, not necessarily biological systems, but I'm also looking at material sciences, engineering. All the engineering, in fact, can in fact be further refined, made more secure, made stronger, made more resilient to environmental factors through AI. So from a business perspective, when I see how the businesses themselves have in fact gained or benefited from these technological improvements, is that some of the businesses have evolved. Some of the businesses, at least in my opinion, have just are more a product of pop culture. But I'll take an example which I particularly like, is that of IBM. IBM were the pioneers of a computing device, but they eventually realized that hardware as such would be commoditized eventually, and this in fact did happen. So slowly but steadily they realized this, and in fact started making preparations for that. And in parallel, they also started developing and pushing for services, which now IBM is in fact known for. A lot of AI-based innovation is in fact coming from IBM right now, and we don't see hardware that much from IBM, although we do see specialized receptacles or certain hardware from IBM. But as such, IBM, at least in my opinion, has become more technologically evolved, wherein in the face of disruptive technology, they have successfully developed a business which is more transformative in nature. So that is my take on technology's impact on an individual as well as on businesses.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a few examples of technologies that I have been working with my clients and how I see their impact on users. So I'll be taking these examples across sectors, like, for example, telecom. One of the technologies that I worked on for my clients is called broadcast broadband convergence. So like either we get content through the broadcast medium, like on cable and through your antenna, or we get it on your phone through the internet. So the future is going to be like both these things are going to converge. They're going to exchange data across each other. So depending upon who the receiver is and what is the network current, the load on that, they will switch across these channels. So for example, if you're watching an IPL match and you're watching it on Hotstar, and suddenly there's like 1.5 million people watching, and it goes down like to say 100,000 after some time, say when some Dhoni gets out or whatever, right? So then how do you utilize the infrastructure like accordingly? So to switch between broadcast and broadband. So that's a huge impact, which like you'll see a large number of Indians who consume content, right? They would be impacted by that. So on telecom. Then if you look at healthcare, so one common problem like we see is like breast cancer. A lot of breast cancer goes undetected because women, they're very uncomfortable with having to go through a mammogram, which is invasive, at times painful, expensive, inaccessible to a majority of women. So like being able to, for example, just stand and not even have to take any sort of image, just take a thermal image, which is like just scanning the temperature in the body from a distance without the person, having to go through anything invasive. And on the basis of that, using AI to automatically detect with a high degree of accuracy certain regions where there is a probability of breast cancer. So another one of my clients is working on this. And then say we look at education. So we find that children nowadays, they are exposed to a lot of content on the internet. It's very hard to prevent children from accessing content on YouTube or on Google. And there's a lot of things which are passed off in the name of education, but they may not even be true, they may be misleading. And so how do you ensure that your children are getting access to the right kind of information? And they use the internet, but to learn rather than to be misguided. So like there is a companion robot made by one of my clients, which uses artificial intelligence to understand the child's likes and dislikes, and which is almost humanoid-like, and which is very cute, and which has got a nice voice, and which the child enjoys interacting with. Like, I've seen my nephews in the US, and they talk to Alexa, and it's very boring, It's like, Alexa, what's the weather? And it just gives you a routine answer, right? So whereas here, it's like the robot would understand the weather, understand the child, and make some jokes around it, and also emotionally bond with the child. So that's where it's not only that the robot understands the child's emotions, right? It also has its own emotions, where it can pretend to be happy or sad. So when the child ignores it, right? It actually shows as if it's sad. So the child develops that emotional bond like a friend, and then the robot also like has the ability to maybe educate the child, and when the child is feeling low, encourage, motivate, all these things. So this is on the field of education. And then let's look at, say, marketing, advertising. So anyway, we get a lot of push advertisements on Google and Facebook. And so we are anyway, surrounded by all kinds of advertising content. And one of my clients is helping advertisers reach their target audience segments very accurately, and at the same time without sort of violating privacy. So for example, like a Google, right, they have actual data of all the users, because anyone who's using, say, an Android phone, Google knows your location. So they know, like, you went into a particular coffee shop in the morning, you went to your office, whether you took time off and went somewhere else from fooling around. Like, Google knows all these things about you, right? And they don't even need your permission for it, because they've got it through Android. They don't need to look at in-app data to get that information. So whereas what do other companies do who are not Google, right? So one of my clients is using a lot of data which is not a violation of privacy, just in-app data and Wi-Fi data, GPS data, whatever the users are allowing, which is very limited. And still, despite the limitation in the data, being able to see the patterns from different sources of data, correlate them using AI, and still accurately determine how many people are there at a given location and what segment they are without revealing their privacy, the name, and all those things, determining gender, other such segments to enable advertisers to target them, right, without invading privacy. And some of the challenges of privacy, so there are some technologies which I'm not even in a position to talk about because they're so new, so cutting edge, applications haven't been filed yet. But I see that there are even solutions to even the privacy concerns that we are talking about, how it's possible to address those using technology. So some of the worst fears we have of AI kind of causing privacy-related challenges can be addressed, again, using technology itself.
Ma'am, just to answer your question on whether these technologies are good or bad. Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'm having a foot pain. And I immediately got advertisements of dentists and things like that.
That's true.
I had Alexa at home, and my grandchildren would start playing with the Alexa. I mean, they're not human. These children have more Facebook friends than they have real
True.
friends.
Uh,
So same way with this, sometimes people like me who are grandmothers, it really worries me.
Very true.
We may forget how to human to human, how to interact. We may be superbly good, but are we good human
Yeah, true. I agree with all those points, but
I really have. I'm a biotechnologist. What worries me in the last 10, 15 years, what are the new products that we have in home? I don't see anything except these Alexas and mobile phones and what we had as a child. I didn't have a refrigerator. I got a refrigerator. I got radio to television, television to vacuum cleaners to this. Good cars. What are we seeing now? You know, we may, even if you have autonomous cars, you may have IoT connected cars, you may have. But where is the new type of technologies that I see in the physical space? I see a lot in the AI. I see a lot in the digital. I see a lot in phones but where are we going other than these?
okay.
Is my concern.
Very valid concern, but I would like to talk about some
These
of
are
the,
great. I'm not saying that.
yeah, some of these technologies and,
It's really helped us.
yeah, and give some basic numbers and probably that would underline the importance of the goodness part of it. Of course, there is bad part of it. We would deal the bad part of it outside this room in our house. We will talk about the good things today. Yeah, if you look at AI, uh, first thing is AI is not new to us. Whenever people talk about AI, they talk as if it was invented yesterday or day before yesterday, or it is getting invented now. But AI is at least 70-year-old technology, right? Um, why did it not become popular, or why did it not become real? Why was it not possible to implement AI? Was because two important pillars of AI were missing, right? In the last 10 years, these two important pillars have developed humongously. One is data, as you can readily recognize. The second thing is AI workloads, AI compute. I mean, the compute required for all AI workloads is huge. Massively parallel processing requirements are there. In the last 10 years, the technology, right, the compute that is available, the processing that is being done has increased at least many folds. That's one thing, and the data has become available. Because of these two things, AI is becoming reality. AI is still in its very, very nascent stage. What we see today is chatbots, right? Probably chatbots is one of the biggest inventions of AI as on today, but it is at a very, very, very nascent stage. That, yeah, healthcare. When it comes to healthcare, I would just like to give one data point, especially when it comes to cancer detection. Doctors who are trained, I don't have anything against doctors, and I am quoting from a report, right? The accuracy with which the cancer detection happens with a human being there is around 47 or 46%, whereas AI-based applications are able to detect cancerous cells with 98% accuracy, which is a huge, huge contribution to healthcare, right? And I'm not glorifying cancer, but cancer is, yeah, cancer is one of the deadly diseases. If you look at people in stage 3 and stage 4, it is really, really painful. It is. Yeah, yeah. I would talk about that also. Yeah. So when it comes to AI on healthcare, I gave you a data point. Similarly, if we look at India, Niti Aayog has come up with a policy paper, AI for all, and there are five major areas. And I would like to talk about two major areas. One is health, three probably: health, agriculture, and smart mobility, which is very much required for India, given where we are. Given the traffic conditions in most of the metros, it is horrible. It is horrible. Professionals would spend at least 4 hours on the road, which is criminal waste of time. If smart mobility can improve, if it can decrease the amount of time that we spend on roads, it will be a huge contribution to the economy and wellness of this country, right? So smart mobility, AI applied to smart mobility is aimed to solve such issues. And agriculture, if you look at agriculture sector today, the, yeah, true. I'll talk about one of the major elements of infrastructure also when it comes to 5G, when I talk about 5G. And agriculture, as we very well know, the contribution of agriculture to Indian GDP is what? 18%, 20%, 16%, and 16 to 18%. And the objective of this present government is to increase that to at least 30% or 35%, whatever it is. Right? Exactly, it came down. Yeah. Now, yeah, we have to bring it back. Otherwise, there is no way that we can reach. As a country, we can be a 5 trillion economy, and with our GDP, if our GDP does not grow at 10%, right? The aspirations, employment aspirations of this country cannot be met. 7% GDP, 7.5% GDP could be the fastest growing GDP in the world, but it's not good enough for India because 7.5% GDP will not meet the aspirations of this world, of this country. So,
but what is also important is about the GDP. Number one, the GDP may increase, but you have to see whether inequality aspect is taken care of.
true.
The income of the higher up may go up, but then
Yeah.
the
Is it distributed?
so
Yeah.
that is very important. So per capita is
Yeah.
one very important.
That is true. Thank you very much, sir. And from there, if we move to one of the fundamental technologies that we did not discuss so far is, what is enabling all this? Or one of the major enabling factor is 5G. If you look at the difference between 4G and 5G, or if, okay, let me take a step back and ask you, what is the difference between 3G and 4G? Any thoughts? It was all about speed, right? Right? What? Plus one, right. That's true. That is true. It was all about. Yep. Thank you. Thanks for that. It was all about enhanced mobile broadband connectivity, right? 3G to 4G transition was improving enhanced mobile broadband connectivity. But if you look at 5G, 5G brings in two additional aspects. One is machine-to-machine communication, which happens at less than sub 1 gigahertz frequency range, right? And enhanced mobile broadband communication happens 1,000 times faster because the frequency band at which the enhanced mobile broadband communication happens is around 2.4 to 3.6 or 3.7 gigahertz or so. In addition to that, one of the major contribution of 5G is ultra low reliability, ultra low latency, high reliability communication, which happens at ultra low latency, high reliability communication, which happens about 26 gigahertz or so. What URLLC enables is robotic surgery. Somebody sitting in the for example, US, right? He's conducting a surgery on the screen. A robot in one of the remote places in India would pick up those signals and do exactly the same thing on a real person, right? So you can imagine the amount of latency that is allowed there, right? If the latency is probably microseconds, right? So 5G enables that. And we talk about self-driven cars. As Sir was mentioning, today, the estimate is, I may be missing the decimal point, but the road deaths today is around 1.8 million or 18 million throughout the world.
In US, in North America, it is 2.5 million.
Then it is 18 million throughout the world, the road deaths, right?
US, I know.
Yeah. And autonomous driving, the aim of autonomous driving is not just driverless cars. So you sit in the back seat and do whatever you like and you are driven. It is fancy enough, but the actual goal which inspires every autonomous driving company is how can I reduce 18 million deaths and bring it to few hundreds, right? That is the real inspiring thing or inspiring goal, right? So the autonomous driving has a goal of bringing down the road deaths, right? Accidents.
What will happen? See, I was reading in an article that if that is so, then you don't need ambulances, you don't need emergency bed in the hospitals, you don't need.
Exactly.
In US, there will be a challenge to insurance company to the tune of $200 billion.
Exactly. So
So new business model has to be there.
So that is the promise of autonomous driving, right? And promise of autonomous driving is fulfilled because of URLLC component or the leg of 5G. So these are some of the technologies that are happening and how it would impact us. And there will be huge changes in the business models. And whether it is good or bad, coming to that question again, this would, most of the things that we are doing today, most of the things that we do today without applying our minds today will be taken over by machines. That is inevitable. It will be taken over by machines.
Now Google Maps, you know, it becomes like, oh, how did I do 5 years back?
Okay.
It's on Google Maps.
Yeah. And when you have so much time on your hand, what is it that you need to do? What is the promise of all this? Of this technology is meditation, innovate, come up with new tech. Right? So the goal of all these technologies, if you tie all these technologies together, at the end of the day, what you get, or what I would get as a human being, is more time which I can invest on quality things. Right?
There will be also AI will be used for patent drafting.
Uh,
And go home at 3 o'clock.
yeah. So.
Maybe.
So this is the outlay of technology and how it works. So we came and reached a position where it will give us, you human beings, more time to innovate, right? So from there we will take off on an IP trajectory. Before that, you had a question.
So, quite an interesting discussion, I believe, and it begs a question. Then, at the end of the day, as you said, would all humans be same? They all would be smart. Because AI would be doing things, AI would be choosing their trade. Humans would be humans. There would be no classification in humans. I mean, like, for example, I'm a mechanical engineer, and somebody else is an electronics engineer. Then, with AI taking over everything, everybody would be equally qualified. Everybody
I don't think so. I don't think so. No.
It's like,
परिश्रमों में जो बात लिखी हुई है प्रारब्ध की वो प्रारब्ध तो वर्क करेगा प्रारब्ध और पुरुषार्थ दोनों काम करेंगे
So, you know, it's if you use the analogy of that each one of us has calculators, but not all of us are good at maths, right? Although everyone carries a calculator, it's everywhere in our computers, in our devices, everywhere. But it's so I would go back to the point SK made about then you have more time left for yourself. You may probably want to utilize that intellect to do something which is of greater value than actually doing those mechanical tasks. But then it doesn't necessarily, I might want to drop the adjective smart. Just because you're carrying a calculator, it may not be a smart human being because it's actually the machine doing your work, right?
Can we put that question in another form? Can the human being be more creative due to AI? Or AI can be more creative or innovative than human beings?
That is the promise of all these technologies. That is the intent of all these technologies, right? And if we misuse, it is our own bad creativity.
Possibility that all person
Yeah. You can, yeah, you can immediately appreciate she has a fractured. It is just a dumb sling sitting there, right? But if it had sensors and if it would give you indication that, okay, your finger has improved this much, the fracture has improved this much, it will be a great value add for me, right? Rather than waiting for 4 weeks. If it heals in 2 weeks, why should I wear it for 2 more weeks? IoT, one of the classic example of IoT would be that, right? So there is a lot of positive contribution of all these technologies to our lives. But if we choose to use it in a wrong way, it will be a disaster. With that, yeah, Prashant.
Yes.
That is true.
Yes, there's a lot of technology that was needed to do it. Without that sequencing, we wouldn't do that. But we had that sequencing, but the computing power is actually where I can see the big difference.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. With that, I would like to pose, Prashant, did you have anything to add?
Just a continuing thought to what was being discussed, like one example, and it's a very crude example though, like the washing machine. It's a very simple machine as such. It doesn't harm or kill anyone, but it actually saves time. You don't end up washing your clothes. But does that mean that it gives you an opportunity to laze around? The answer is no. The reason or the objective behind these such technologies is that you are better utilizing your time to make something better and to become better. And that is the objective behind technological innovation always. It's not that we can relax and then now sit back. That you don't reach the next milestone after that if one achieves that. It might be a desire for some individuals, but as a community, as a technologist community, people won't stop at that. They'll probably start innovating better, faster, and we'll see results come quicker. That's it.
With that, what kind of new inventions would you envisage that would come into this world from human beings as well as machines? Machines also would become capable of inventing, right? Especially AI machines would become capable of inventing their own code. Where do you see this world going?
I had one question before. In AI, I'm not a high-tech person, but AI and a machine learning can only do that much amount of things that you fed in, right? You feed in more data. Like if you say today, AI can detect cancer, it couldn't have done this before unless and until I gave a million scans and I said, this is what it is. All the thermal scans, all my Raman spectra scans, all my imaging scans, I had to make the machine learn. Correct? But now if I have a tuberculosis in that versus the AI, unless the AI knows how to differentiate, which has to be done by humans, how do you think AI can go and do a next step and say, no, no, there's a virus inside you, there's a tuberculosis inside you, but you don't have cancer? How would it do?
Would anybody like to take
Yeah. Just to give a short answer, it can't, because you need just like
AI
huh.
going to invent?
Yeah, so AI, the invention or the
Maybe, yeah,
concept,
I don't
huh.
know.
But the concept of invention by an AI actually arises from this theory that AI over a period of time would develop awareness and consciousness. And that is where the problem solving, or at least identifying where a problem actually exists, even though there may not be any, would come into picture. But with the state of AI right now, it is in fact artificial intelligence. It's not intelligence as such. So the point of inflection where the machine as such would gain conscience and awareness as to its existence, that's more a philosophical and a theoretical concept. But coming from, okay, AI creating something, computers at a certain level are in fact doing that. They are crunching data and giving out certain analytics, which one would not know or at least be aware of. Big data analytics is all about that. And one may actually ask, is it something which I had envisaged? The answer is no. Many times I come across correlations which perhaps were not evident or were not logically derivable from existing data. So AI invents, I would say AI only gives a different or the more accurate picture rather than to a trained professional rather than to itself.
just to add to? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. I can wait.
Yeah, so when we talk about machine learning, there's supervised learning, there's unsupervised learning. So supervised learning is like where it's given input saying that like for these images, this is the outcome. This is actually, but unsupervised like deep learning, like which you use with Google's deep learning, right? So there you just have a lot of data and the machine just tries to do some clustering. It sees that there are some patterns like the data is going in this distribution. And that's where like a human being using certain skills that we have, we would think in a particular way because we're trained to think like that. The system has no such training. It will just look at data and it will plot the distribution. It will see patterns. So for example, if it spots a certain pattern, and then the human being can like analyze that cluster and see, oh, this probably come up with an explanation. The reason for this pattern is maybe because of these reasons.
Chess or Go.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there may be 10 into the power of 36 different options which I cannot compute, that will compute.
Yeah,
It's same as that.
So it can filter out those and it can see patterns, and the human being can choose and can figure out some explanation. So sometimes like there's some AI where it will give you some results, but it will not tell you why. It will not give you an explanation why those results are relevant. So for example, like it can say predict that people from a certain population segment or are more inclined to certain, behavior or certain diseases or something like that. It could predict like that. But then again, like you don't know what the reason is. There's no explanation for it. It's just based on data. So then it's up for the human beings to interpret that and make sense of it.
In my understanding, this is how people talk about IP ownership of AI-generated inventions, right? Yeah, from my understanding, this is what it actually means. Let us say here is a AI-capable machine, which can compute the workloads. So the inputs that you give to this machine is data, and you would have given, provided it with algorithms, which could be neural network-based algorithms or ML algorithms, all those things. So when you provide these two, let me call data as X and AI algorithms as Y, you expect a result which is Z. As long as you get Z as your result, this is just computing, right? It is a much more efficient, probably 10,000 times or 100,000 times efficient machine, right? So there is no inventive step or invention generated by the machine itself, because data was provided by human being. All these AI algorithms was provided by human being. This hardware or this machine was developed by a human being, and it is generating result as expected. So there is no contribution, intellectual contribution from the machine itself. But you give X, you give Y, you are expecting a result as Z, but it is not Z. You get K. How did it become K? After this machine took all this intelligence, did it come up with an algorithm on its own? And did
saw a pattern which you and I didn't see.
yeah, right? So did it come up with
I see it all the time in biotechnology.
yeah?
Like BRCA1, BRCA2 was, you could not done it humanly possible.
That's true.
You could see it.
Yeah, and if the machine has seen it, and if it has come up with its own algorithm, and if this algorithm is playing in addition to X and Y and generating K instead of Z, let me call this piece, which is invented by the machine, as M. Who is the owner of that? I am not.
The person who put the algorithm in,
Today,
why not?
oh,
I mean,
today,
it is human.
yeah,
Humans have made it.
yeah, that is the discussion that's going on throughout the world, because all these years what we foresaw was what we no,
but
that's
when
a possibility with the
starts
machine.
generating its own algorithms, that is something that a human had no inclination to do.
Yeah,
Human could
there is-
not
there
even
is no
predict
contribution.
that the machine will create its own algorithm out of it.
The machine has been created by the system which only has produced the output. It's created
At the entry level.
We'll have to go to the physicist and find out whether the stone has a life.
Yeah,
Only human beings
I
have
mean,
ability.
if we extend that,
The most invented that the plants have the life. Now the stone may have
No, I
life. So
think at
basic
an
may have a
entry
life.
level that could work, that logic. But after 2, 3, 4 lines of iteration, down the line then, when the algorithm is creating own algorithms, it will be difficult to fix ownership so easily.
exactly, that is the question that is being asked, because if you look at all the IP laws today, one second, excuse me, let me complete this thought. So all the IP laws throughout the world, they aim at providing protection for a natural person, right? Machines was not conceived by any lawmakers so far, but the biggest debate throughout the world is, should we incorporate machine also as a IP owner? That is the big discussion that's happening throughout. Yeah, artificial person. What are your thoughts on that?
But this is what Dabba's thing will come.
So it's a very challenging situation to be in and a very difficult question to answer. If you look at how the US courts have been interpreting it, they didn't even consider a monkey a natural person to be able to grant copyrights to a monkey in a selfie. Currently, if we talk of the trends, that is where we are. Even in India, if we look at our statutes, it's only stressing upon natural person. There is no way machine will have that ownership. But on the other hand, if you look at an interim period where there was a humanoid called Sophia, which was given citizenship by, say, the UAE government. So if you can grant citizenship, then you are actually saying that this humanoid has an entity which is equivalent to that of a natural person. Citizenship is a right that gets connected with a lot of other things like your fundamental duties, your rights as a citizen of that country, and so on and so forth. And then there is a whole question of, if you're a citizen, you have civil rights, you have criminal liabilities in case you end up doing something which is wrong. So the whole jurisprudence, whether it is the criminal jurisprudence or the civil rights, everything will need to change. And of course, now Sophia has been disabled, or the creator decided to sort of disable the humanoid for various reasons. But we've had that precedent. So if there are countries that are going to grant citizenship right, then what happens to immigration? If I want to bring that humanoid with me or travel with that humanoid to another country, and what happens to actions of that humanoid during that period, and so on and so forth. So it's a very challenging situation to be in, and it's an interesting debate, but so far it's only a debate because we are still sticking to natural person. If you look at how the courts are interpreting it as a precedent, we've only had natural persons till date.
Very soon we'll also have robotics doing surgery. And then what happens? Now the doctor makes a mistake, he can catch what is the robot. And who owns that robot? I mean, what is the liability? And that really sometimes...
Yeah. Yeah, in such cases, then obviously it would, yeah. So, I think so. The reason why we are grappling with the situation is because the laws in their present stage don't contemplate such eventualities, or haven't contemplated such eventualities. Obviously, the laws have to be amended. Even the Information Technology Act did amend the Criminal Procedure Code, the IPC as well. So obviously, the times change, the laws also have to change. I think so. Right now, the laws, patent law notwithstanding, or even copyright law notwithstanding, there are other laws which are also being debated and discussed. Ethical reasons are being discussed. So from that point of view, it is very difficult to say that okay, an AI is a legal entity or a natural person, or at least should have rights as those of a natural person. But coming to intellectual property, wherein certain inventorship could be in fact associated with AI, particularly for patents, is a question which has to be resolved through legislation. There is no moral answer to it. It's not that we are debating a right to life, or at least personal liberties are at stake. It's just an ownership with respect to a certain technology. This ownership to a technology, to such an intangible right, is a creation of statute. Even for an artificial intelligence, it has to come through a statute itself. In its present form, at least in my opinion, it may not be possible.
So I agree with what you're saying. It's not a life and death situation, or it's not akin to, say, a criminal jurisprudence related issue that we are discussing here. It's only about fixing ownership and deciding who owns the IP. But it's not really simple. If you decide then that AI can be granted ownership or IP, then essentially you have to look back and see what IP is. IP right is only a specific right over the technology, and it's an excluding right. It excludes the right of others. You are given that right for a certain period of time to then monetize that. So then IP is owned by AI. AI starts monetizing. AI starts hoarding, then money. And then what are we talking about? Then the way we look at currencies need to change. The way we look at the whole financial domain needs to change. If we have AI, then start monetizing IP, because they essentially own the IP. It's not a human. It's not even a company that triggered that AI or whatever. So the entire ecosystem will have to change then. Absolutely. And then they may decide that they will trade in their own currencies. So it'll be a parallel world.
That religious creator, God will be the person, you will be granted the patent. That is the fiction may come.
Mr. Murthy, you were saying that the patents are granted to a natural person. Okay. But then inventor is a natural person so far till we resolve the problem of artificial intelligence and machine. But then once it is assigned to a corporate, so the patent belongs to a company. Okay. So similarly, when a company can own the patent, why not a machine? A machine can also be owned by somebody because the company is controlled by the shareholders and the directors are prosecuted for
But
any
company
report of the
is
company.
considered to be a natural person, and in case of a criminal liability, you hold the directors responsible. Right? So
At the heart of the question is, even if the patent is held by a company, if you look at the list of inventors, it is individual names.
Inventor's name will always be there.
If I did not invent, if the machine invented, which name should I put? Right? So that is the question.
Today we may have a lot of inhibitions, but tomorrow those inhibitions may go.
Right.
That is the question that the world is trying to answer. Coming back,
Yeah, I think that inventorship is based on who has conceptualized the invention and not somebody who has reduced the invention to practice. So I think that whereas AI can contribute to conceptualizing an invention, it's still a human being has to be co-involved because he has to put together the data, the model into some, so there has to be some pre-planning and conceptualization. You should see the potential for the machine to come up with some solutions and to foresee which probability, which combinations are more likely to work than others. So I think that probably the machine can be a co-inventor, maybe not the sole inventor.
that brings us to a very, can you hold on for a minute? I'll pose this question, let them think, and meanwhile you can ask the question. That brings us to a very important question. I forgot. You asked the question.
So, go ahead. Talking about the inventorship of under AI. So basically, when we talk about AI, it has two divisions. One which is machine learning and one which is deep learning, like you said. So like what ma'am was saying, that at the end of the day, we are providing the data, we are providing the inputs, we are providing the rules to identify some pattern or something where the machine is contributing. So anyhow, the inventorship should be for that person who is providing that data. But when we talk about deep learning, it's all about if we have that much amount of data, where we need not to provide those rules, where we need not to provide those intelligence to the machine, and the machine can itself use that humongous amount of data to create its own invention and provide a new application. Like the ma'am said, that identifying tuberculosis rather than, and I never provided the rules for tuberculosis. But because the machine has that much amount of data, it was able to identify that. So do you think that there should be different standards and regulations within the patent offices to evaluate inventions which come under the category of machine learning under AI and the ones which come under deep learning under AI?
Okay. Coming to patent office examination, right? We will definitely, it is definitely on the list. We will touch upon it, and if we don't cover your question, if we don't answer your question, please remind us. We will definitely answer your question. The next question that I was about to ask was, if you look at all these years, right? What we have seen in the history is technology has moved ahead and law has always done a catch-up role, right? Law has always been behind technology, right? It lags technology. But since today we have huge developments in AI going on, and there is a huge possibility that there could be undesirable inventions or undesirable actions by AI inventions. Is there a role for lawyers to play to bring about ethical AI, for example, and set a framework saying that, okay, you do all the inventions in AI, but it has to be within this framework which is good for the mankind, right? Is it possible to put such a framework together? First question. Second question is, there is a discussion that if we put a framework together, then it will obstruct or limit inventions. What are your thoughts on that? Let's start from the far end.
Dr. SK, I want to add one more to this
Yeah.
question. How can IT professionals take advantage of AI because it is inevitable and it is already coming, looming large. So how can IT professionals benefited by AI? To put it in the context, how can we be prepared to absorb AI in our system?
I think that there's definitely scope for the IP industry, IP professionals to integrate AI into what we do. One of the challenges to, I'm sorry, should I come? Yeah. One of the challenges to doing that is because a lot of the knowledge that we have as IP professionals, right, we kind of tend to keep it to ourselves. So like there's a huge gap between people who have a senior level of experience and those who are the junior level. And we don't typically, have that culture of sharing knowledge in our organizations or, even across, like in a conference here, we are sharing knowledge. But like often we don't find that happening. So one of the requirements to use AI, right, like even an IP profession is to codify all the things you do and develop a process and a workflow, make it much more systematic, decision making, make it much more, something that people can visualize. So one idea I have, which I have not yet managed to commercialize or productize, is really to democratize IP, to make like the kind of information that you and I have as IP professionals accessible to non-IP experts. Say, for example, like people in management, like CFOs and marketing heads and R&D heads. They depend on us to understand what is going on. And so, like, we may give them a lot of inputs. They may not understand where we are coming from or where that insight. So they may think that, what does this person know? I've been in this industry for so long. How can this lawyer or whatever advise me on my business, right? So because of this, a lot of decisions are not taken in a timely manner. And so the idea is to bring about transparency. They should not, so this information should be accessible, to be visually accessible to decision makers, like business people. So that's something that I have been planning to work on. But again, because of paucity of time, like we are so caught up in doing our regular jobs that we don't have time. So when, like as we talked about earlier, if we have AI relieving us of regular things, then we would have time to innovate and to actually train our machine learning models to do what we do, which will then make it relevant in our industry. So you asked me the other question regarding ethical AI. Know. So I think innovation and creativity, at least when we are thinking innovatively and creatively, that there should not be like a restriction on that people should be allowed to explore all permutations and combinations. Sometimes we may come up with crazy things which are not feasible, which may not be, which may lead to models which are not entirely ethical or, which may not even be commercializable. You may never make money out of it. So some of the ideas that today are very big, right? People shot them down saying that this is ridiculous. No way can this make money, right? So that's how, because creativity was constrained. But then some people later on found a way. So I think ethics comes in later. I think eventually, like when you're working out a business model, when you're working on how to make it available and accessible to the market, you'll figure out ethical ways of doing it. Even if your technology is neutral. You can use it ethically or non-ethically. There are different ways to go about it. So I think that during the innovation stage, we should not restrict innovation. People should be given, that's my opinion.
Thank you. All this time we were discussing about technology issues, legal issues, IP issues. So probably we have some understanding about all these issues. Now, getting back to the nuts and bolts, it goes back to this question on what should an inventor do when it comes to new technologies? From a disclosure standpoint, what should a IP attorney who prepared the patent application for example, what is the role of an IP attorney, and what is the kind of training and expertise that a patent office would require, and what is the training and expertise that a policymaker and judiciary would require? Prashant, this question is for you.
So from an inventor's point of view, yes. And when I say the inventor, I assume that the inventor is sitting with his IP attorney, because at the same time, one would want to see and understand how they wish to monetize or at least leverage their innovation. So many a times the correct decision or the correct way forward may not be through one IP but through the other. Like for example, if you feel that your AI is something which you do not want to disclose, something which is not detectable, you may probably be better off protecting it as a trade secret as opposed to filing a patent application for that. Obviously, the onus is also on to the patent professional, because understanding the technology in order to assess the metes and bounds of what the invention actually is also important. Because many a times, if you don't understand the technology, obviously the claims that follow through would never be effective. You're trying to claim something which was never which was never invented, and then finally you would be in fact enforcing your claims onto something which, even though is copying the invention, would not be covering the invention. So from the inventor's perspective, yes, they should at least be aware how they want to leverage that technology, that innovation. From the IP professional's perspective, they should also understand what the technology actually is. The patent office has a far more difficult job. Why? Because they have a lot of applications to process. And at that point of time, training definitely would be required for them. But at the same time, I think so the patent office should perhaps explore the possibility of engaging with the IP professionals, or at least engaging with the technologists on a more regular front, so that quicker innovations, they are abreast with the quicker innovations, and they are better positioned to examine such applications. In such cases, obviously, when you're filing a patent application, you're not filing it in a single country, you're filing it in multiple countries. And therefore, certain other measures like patent prosecution highway would in fact, come a long way in reducing the administrative burden of conducting a prior art search, which somebody else or a better patent office or a better search authority has actually done. So from all in all, yes, technically they have to be abreast, they have to pull themselves up, and obviously the judiciary would not be, would have to do the same thing. It would be a tough task considering the nature and the complexity of technology.
Did it answer your question? Lakshika, any final thoughts?
So
We did not touch upon the data.
yeah, I'll just go back to that ethics point, and I would say, see, technology is not biased, but data sets are. And that's what so we need to be careful. So when we're talking about bias, a machine or an AI can have its own biases basis the data sets that are fed into it. But technology does have the ability to then, after a certain, say, testing period or something, exclude those out. And we've seen these cases across the globe where AI was used for, granting bail applications and things like that in the US, and a certain race was denied most of the, bail applications from, which came up from a certain race were denied because of a certain bias in the system. But that is something that was detected, and it is then up to, it's a double-edged sword. It's for the human who's in control of that AI to exclude that through, another algorithm on top of it, or another program on top of it, and that can be managed. But we need to be careful. Data sets are not without biases. But that is also the case with humans. All of us do have our own biases, and those get reflected in the data. So, I mean, it's not that, anybody is feeding those biases into it. It's just the way we are.
If we cannot predict the output of the machine for some cases, like we have a data, and data might have different kind of values. So I want to take an example. For example, I'm training the machine with the terrorist data. I'm having a terrorist data that this is the person, and this is the grade, this is the background, and this is where he is operating. I'm feeding that to the machine. Now, for example, the machine is predicting that according to the data, I'm not predicting because I know that I want to recognize a terrorist group. I want to build a machine which is for the national security. But for example, the machine predicted automatically that the people from the patterns are Muslims. And you put that on the border, it will kill all Muslims. So how can we control the machine if we don't know what will be the prediction? If we don't know the output where it will go, then how can we predict it?
It is very, very unlikely to, for any government, for any insane government to do this. Once you recognize, or once you come up with your decision, go kill, probably that won't happen.
No, this is just an example. But
Yeah.
when you don't know the predict, when you cannot
Yeah.
predict the output, how can you control it?
Hear me out. Once the machine comes up with its prediction, probably a human being would take a look at it and finally make a decision. It is beyond any of our imagination to give that power to pull the trigger to the machine. Probably that won't happen.
So this is
Don't worry about it.
Even in the case of healthcare, still the doctors are
Yeah.
deciding, even though
Exactly, right?
So you need to be careful. You cannot sort of in one go delegate the decision making also to the machine. You will have to look through the patterns. There is a phase, there is a testing that you will put it to, and so on and so forth. Again, during implementation, you would not implement full on. You will want to implement it in phases.
No, my question is different. When you continuously feeding the data to the machine, but you cannot predict the output which can come along. Some data might be biased when you're feeding that into the machine. So you cannot predict that whether that is correct, whether some more information is going with it, which machine can predict the unsupervised part of it.
Correct, and that is exactly what has happened. So the example I was giving you was that in the criminal justice system in the US courts, they used an AI for deciding on bail applications. And they realized that in most of the cases, if the applicant is an Afro-American, his bail application is getting rejected by the courts. But if the person is a white American, then the application is getting allowed. So most of the bails were allowed for people who were non-Afro-Americans. And after a certain period of use, this pattern was seen. And that AI was then disabled because it had a clear bias, and the bias was coming from the data set it had. Not that it picked up on the bias, but because the data set was such. So then, that needs to be tweaked. When you put it back into use or whichever way, those biases can then be overcome through other programs or algorithms.
ground truth will be connected to samples of ground truth can be collected and then correlated with the output of the machine before taking any decision.
They can help you in making a quicker decision, but final decision making is never given to the machines.
You have to program it.
So,
Then in the topic you discussed about artificial person, whether we can give patent or not. In that, the issue which one after it invents or find out something, the decision is to be made by the man whether we can apply for patent or not. Second thing, it has somebody has to apply silent and give it. Third, sometime he has to come for hearing. Fourth, then he has to hear all appeals also. Fourth, finally, it has to exploit it. It may get only 0 rupees. Then what is the use of exploit? He doesn't think how much money he wants because he cannot eat it. So second, finally, he cannot exclude others from doing it.
Apart from
So,
coming for hearing, rest of the things can be done. Because
this is the main topic you are going to cannot be given patent. In that score, some points are.
so one point regarding your question on training, right? So regarding training of examiners, I've dealt with a lot of examiners. So one fundamental training I feel that is lacking among the Indian patent examiners, right, is they have not been trained on claim interpretation. So they know about searching. So they know that, okay, if this technology relates to this field, you can classify it in this code and you can do some keyword searching. They understand keyword searching and classification searching, but they don't know how to read the claim. They don't know what the claim covers and what it doesn't cover. So because of this, any argument that we make as a patent agent, right, to the examiner is based on the claim and the interpretation of the claim. If the examiner gets the interpretation itself wrong, right, he thinks this is what the claim covers, right, then whatever we say about the prior art and all, it doesn't have that strong basis. So I think this training is very important for the patent examiners.
fantastic. I mean, the success of IP system, especially when it comes to new technologies, depends on the examination, quality of examination.
We can ask some controllers to be deputed for this seminar so that.
I don't mind training them. I mean, most of them are clueless. I teach them for example, there's one particular controller, there was a claim which included some plant extract and some other composite material and something else. He said, this is a plant, and he rejected it. I mean, that way, yeah, exactly. So it's like A, B, C, D. A somewhere is an extract of a plant. He said, this is a plant, subject matter not patentable. So you should understand the claim must be construed as a whole, right? And so, but this is something that our controllers with 15 years experience are not clear about.
Okay. We are running short of time. We will open it up for two. We can receive two questions as a panel. If you have two questions.
You told that talking about the AI in agriculture. So whether coming to India, so certain low-scale farmers or human, it will be really helpful to these low-level farmers on say, using an AI in mobile app or transport and agriculture or advertising stations on plants or manure or anything. Is it how could it will be more applicable in agriculture? How could, or it will take to reach out the small scale farmers?
Anybody wants to answer that question or quick? I'll give my 2 cents and they can add up on it. Weather forecast, choice of crops, and if there is a disease, if you do the image analysis and early detection of diseases would all help in it.
And soil quality.
Soil quality.
Fertilizer for that particular.
Yes. So I think the question that I previously asked was a bit
Unanswered, is it?
yeah, I think we went towards automation on saving our time rather than speaking about AI. So, so just a humble opinion that I needed from the panel members about the same thing. AI is day to day being trained on behavioral aspects because the data computation possibility has been improved over the last decade, and to some extent we know how to improve it further or how to make it more efficient. And continuously we are seeking that feedback from the machines itself. How to make you better, how to make the machines better. What else can we do to make them better? So if you look at it from a bird's eye view, then I think machines are suggesting us what to do to make them better. And we are following their lead into it. If I'm wrong, then...
Yeah, you are partly right.
Okay.
Machines
I'm not adjacent to AI technology or something. It's just what I hear in the media or I read in the articles.
Machines can provide you suggestions. You may consider those suggestions and add.
Yeah, that's your choice.
Yeah. So
yes.
you are partly
At
right.
the end, you are the decision maker on saying yes or no. But it goes like the kingmaker kind of a saying that machines are actually. That's how I feel about it. So. So my question is that the moment we have the same or we have coached them about the behavioral aspects, that is the time when my question comes up. If they understand about our behavior and they start computing the data like we do. For example, nobody taught us how to attend conferences, but we attended conferences and based on our experiences, we learned on how to be present or speak or something like that. And that is what we are trying to feed in terms of data to the machines. So, do we actually see a possibility as shown in the sci-fi movies that they would actually be replacing us? Not soon, I know.
Yeah. Even after 20 years, there is a huge difference in taking your wife out for dinner and Sophia for dinner.
Yes, that is true.
For sure. So that difference will always exist. Probably what I foresee is there will be a coexistence of machines and humans, with human beings doing more valuable things, high creativity, if at all we use our, what should I say?
Creativity.
Emotional intelligence.
All these things. Right?
All these things are embedded in computers
Yeah,
now.
probably. Okay. Any other final thoughts?
So one last thing, I wanted to touch upon the topic of brain-computer interface and AI because presently we are using brain-computer interface, for example, to cure diseases like blindness or deafness or something like that. But if brain-computer interface in future clubs up with AI, then it would be a different ball game for the inventors, deciding the inventor, then who's the owners, and then IP will also get to next level. So that is the time, like we have to think about these issues from now on only. So what you said, so what you were like proposing is that the laws should be, the laws are always lagging behind the technology. But we are at a situation now, people are aware of the technology and they are aware of the law. like 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, people were not aware of legal and technical both things. But now that people are, then codification should start happening from now on. So that was one suggestion I wanted.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. At the beginning only I said it is a hand-picked special panel, and you agree with me, right? So thank you very much, and you were a fantastic audience. Thanks, Ekta.
Thanks for being such a great audience.
Valedictory function is happening at Sour in 1, right? So please attend the